Good morning, everybody, or wherever you are. Also, good afternoon or good evening. Yeah, my name is Christopher. I'm from the Share&Charge Foundation, and with me is Dietrich, also from the Share&Charge Foundation. And we will lead you through this webinar. And yeah, we aim for approximately 1 hour. We will also record this webinar, so it will be available for you on YouTube then. We will share that via the newsletter. So you can share it with your peers afterwards. And what we also will share is the slides that we use, so that you have it for you as well. We will have certain sections during the webinar where you can then also ask questions. You can just use the comment function, and we will watch out for your questions and then reply to them after we've covered a certain part of the webinar. I guess that's it for this slide. We had some nice feedback of you ahead of this webinar. We were sharing this survey, and most of you also were contributing to this. And you can see here that there were various topics that you're interested in. We try to incorporate that into this 1 hour that we have together. We can't, of course, tackle all of them. Happy that you reach out and afterwards if you have further questions that we didn't have the chance to talk about. But mainly, as you can see, like, we will cover what is different between OCPI and using the OCN when you do your eRoaming. We will discuss a little bit about traditional eRoaming hubs and how the open charging network is different. We will cover how you then in the end set up your eRoaming, whether you should run your own node, and etc. etc. Talk about costs and security features and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess that's for the intro, and then I would hand over to Dietrich now to give us some insights into the business rationale.
Good morning, guys. Also from my side, good that you're not Zoom tired yet, but that you join us here for this 60 minutes. We'll go through these 60 minutes, as Chris said, with a little bit of why, what's the rationale of the OCN, how does it work, what services are offered, and how about operations and costs to cover your questions. So to start with the why, I mean, it's quite straightforward for most of the experts here in the call, but eRoaming for the mass market of e-mobility is obviously a must-have. It's all about joyful driver experience, and at least in Germany here, we see that last week again, there were an announcement of subsidies of 2.5 billion euros for charging infrastructure and additional 3,000 euros per electric vehicle. But I mean, we can subsidize as much as we want. If the driver experience is a bad one, e-mobility will not kick off. And we see in roaming a trend. You all know that we have the roaming hubs, but we see this trend of CPOs and eMSPs migrating towards OCPI and the peer-to-peer connection. And here we put together a little bit of the advantages and disadvantages of peer-to-peer, because it's obviously not it's not black or white, but there are reasons for the existence of both of the centralized roaming hubs and for peer-to-peer connections. And what we observe is that integration of an effort is obviously medium with roaming hubs, because you integrate once. You integrate either via OCPI with some of the hubs or with protocols they use. And you have a high integration effort on OCPI side, because you obviously have to integrate each time again with another party. And we'll come to that in a little bit more detail later, also around OCPI and the different specifications for the time being. We have a high external cost on roaming hubs, and those will obviously also increase the more assets there are connected to. And with this also comes a danger of market power. So if there is 1 or 2 roaming hubs in the end turning out to be the winners of this game, there is a high market concentration. On the other hand, with OCPI, you basically have no external cost. You integrate once internally, and then it's done. Security-wise, we see the risk of a single point of failure with roaming hubs. On OCPI side, it's much higher. Obviously, it's a bold statement to talk about high security, but it's at least higher than roaming hubs. And then we are coming to the question of services, whether with this kind of connection, you can also make use of additional services. And yes, with the hubs, that's obviously given. So you have some contracting tools, you may have some settlement tools, but these are obviously only provided by the roaming hubs. And on OCPI side, you don't have that because you just have a bilateral communication integration with your peer. What we are now doing with the OCN and what we have worked on, and some of you in this call are already part of this journey for the last years, and we tested a lot and we failed a lot, but we came up with this new architecture where we got very, very positive feedback in the last month of the open charging network. And what we are doing here is we are basically combining the best of two worlds. So we are combining the efficiency of a centralized roaming hub with the stability and the low external cost of a peer-to-peer connection. So the integration effort with the open charging network with other CPOs or MSPs is really low to maximum medium. That depends a little bit on your OCPI specification. You have no external cost. It's an open source solution which you can use. It's a high security because it's a decentralized system. And we'll come to that later in this call. There are also services available. So you are in a peer-to-peer decentralized world, but still you can make use of commercial services like smart charging, settlement, payment, etc., and also from various players, and not only from the platform provider. Having said that, I hand over to Chris, who is now doing a little bit more of a deep dive, as deep as it is kind of reasonable for a business webinar, into what the OCN really is.
Okay, here you can see how the open charging network could look like in the future. All these charging ports here, for example, those are the charge point operators that are connected to the open charging network. And then we can see these electric vehicles. Those are for us the e-mobility service providers, how the OCPI protocol is defining them. And yeah, you can see that each of those parties is connected to one OCN node. This is basically a server that allows a CPO or eMSP to be available to everyone in the network. And you can see what kind of signals are then sent over the open charging network. And the OCN nodes, they basically function as, for example, an email server, sending these signals to other servers that then take care of delivering them to the recipient. That, for example, this start signal is for. And yeah, what we achieve with that is that yeah, everyone is connecting just once and is then connected to everyone on the network. And this, of course, brings down the cost for integration a lot. And to tackle that more in detail, I want to use this slide. The ones that from you that already work with OCPI and made peer-to-peer connections with it can maybe or do maybe share my view on this, because you have a different kind of costs here. When you make a traditional OCPI peer-to-peer connection, you first have to align with the other party, the other tech department. How have you implemented OCPI? That obviously is a very complex task because the OCPI protocol is very wide and a lot of topics are covered. And then in a lot of cases, you have to make adjustments, introduce some dialect or something to the OCPI protocol to make sure that everything works with your peer. And those are very, very high efforts that you have to take into account when you're planning to use OCPI. And then, of course, you have to make QA and production testing with each partner that you're onboarding. The same is also true for operations that can be very complex because you have now, imagine 40 different peer-to-peer connections that you all have to monitor and make sure that they also work with each other. And it could also be that some of the connections are conflicting with each other because in one, the token module works in a certain way, and with the other connection, you again have a different kind of implementation. So keeping overview of all of that is a quite complex task for your IT ops. And you keep hiring IT ops, the more connections you in the end have. So this chart is of course very simplified, but what we want to say with that is that you have a lot of costs that for each OCPI connection that you have. You of course get experience with it over time, but because it is a wide protocol and it is peer-to-peer, it in the end costs you resources, internal resources, each time you make a connection. And when we are now using the open charging network with OCPI, and we just connect once, we can bring all these efforts down because we all share one network, we all share one, or that is, would be of course the goal, that we all share one kind of implementation. And this is where the network can help with, because if you have integrated once and you're connected once, then you expect from others that they use the protocol as the open charging network is using it. And what we can see that all these efforts, they go down dramatically for your future connections, basically. And yeah, you of course have the same effort in the beginning, like you have to integrate once, you have to make an OCPI connection once to the open charging network, but then the upcoming connections, they are all just a matter of configuration. Then your IT operation guys, they just have to make a couple of clicks instead of doing handshakes and all these alignment and adjustments. Yeah, it's just then a matter of configuration in the end, which brings down the level of complexity. Yeah, do we have some questions already? It doesn't look like.
Right? But that's also fine. Then we go on.
Okay. Yeah, then looking into the what, like I already explained a little bit, like from a broader perspective and what the open charging network is. But again, to remind you what kind of position it has along the value chain, it may be that this slide can help you with it. We have, as you can see here, the charge point operators, they of course have a lot of different charging infrastructure, and they mostly use their OCPP protocol for it to connect to all the different manufacturers' charging stations. And on the other hand, you have the e-mobility service providers that have a lot of drivers connected to their solution using their app, their RFID cards. And then you have the OCPI protocol, which is led by the eRoaming Foundation that was founded a couple of days ago, actually. And we work very close with them because what the Open Charging Network is it's just a implementation of the OCPI protocol and following 100% what the eRoaming Foundation or what the Open Charge Point interface is then basically providing. And this OCN node that is then in between helps everybody to be connected to each other and serves as a server, basically an OCPI server for making the communication between charge point operators and e-mobility service providers. A quick reminder, because I often get also asked what the OCPI protocol is about, because I guess if you're not technical, then you might not want to read the whole OCPI documentation, which is actually very long. But here you can see an overview what the OCPI protocol is providing you if you are a charge point operator or a navigation service provider or an e-mobility service provider. You have POA data, meaning locations of charging stations. You can exchange tariff data, like what does it cost to actually charge at a charging station. You have support of RFID cards, so you can send over tokens and now you moved my slide. You can use RFID cards and send over tokens, identifiers for these RFID cards that your drivers can charge at all the different charging stations. You have an app support. There's this commands module that allows you to send remote start-stop signals. You have then charging sessions in the OCPI protocol that give you constant updates about the current status of a charging session. in the end of the charging session, you get a charge detail record sent over the OCPI protocol. And there are, in the current version, the 2.2 version, there are also some smart charging capabilities that are also aligned with what the OCPP protocol is providing in terms of charging profiles, where you can define what the needs are of the driver in terms of charging, that you can then use for balancing the grid or whatever use case you have in mind. And the open charging interface, open charge point interface, is obviously working on the future modules that will enhance it, make it better in the future. And we, from like the open charging network, one is always making sure that we stick to the latest version of the OCPI protocol and make sure that you can implement all the use cases that OCPI wants you to enable to. Yeah, I guess that's for technical details. Hope that was a good introduction for you.
Thank you. But we obviously see that roaming is more than just a communication layer and just a technical connection. The OCN is, as Chris pointed out, offering their absolutely reduced time and efforts of integration. So we talk really about weeks and months, which you can save. If we are working with partners currently, that is what we see, that it's really about a whole lot of developer weeks and months if you make use of the OCN. And here in the slide, we are trying to show the core difference of the OCN towards roaming hub and OCPI, which was one of the questions also beforehand. So what we are doing is that we work very much in analogy to the internet. And what is really important for us is that we have a split between the communication layer, which from our point of view needs to be really open and accessible for everyone, and a commercial service layer. And that the commercial service layer can then easily connect to the communication layer. So what we currently see is that within roaming hubs, we have efficient communication layers with a centralized integration. And then you also have the potential of services. There are services offered. But the challenge there is that it's only offered by the roaming hubs. So you have no choice as a customer of this platform to choose from different suppliers, but you are dependent on the quality of the service of this platform. With OCPI, on the other hand, we have the, yes, it is only a standard. We have the challenge that you are connected to another party, but you cannot make use of additional commercial services of a third party. Or you may, but integration efforts are tremendously higher than on central roaming plans. And what we are doing now with the OCN from our architecture perspective is that we went live with a communication layer in March, which can be now used by everybody. And we are now also starting to have this service layer. And we are inviting companies to build solutions on top of it, and we'll go into it later. It's cool, very good to see also the high interest in the ecosystem, although everything is really new, that we are approached by a lot of companies who are now starting to build solutions on top of the OCN, which can then be used by companies who are integrated with the OCN. A very quick introduction, how does it work? It's basically, we are currently building an app interface, which will go live within the next weeks. And this allows really all the service providers to connect to one of the nodes, and wherever to whatever node it is connected, all the parties in the network can basically plug and play and make use of this service. And they can choose whether it's ideally, in a few years, they can choose between different settlement services, between different smart charging services, between different contracting services, POA data services, etc., and can always kind of choose the best service in order to have a good portfolio for their customers. On the website of Share&Charge, you may have seen our OCN service store. It's obviously not a store because Share&Charge is not earning any money with it. It is just a kind of matchmaking. And on some of them, we are giving now an outlook on how it may look like. On others, there are real companies now working on it. And we want to do a little bit of a deep dive now into these services about the status, to be very transparent there, and how we foresee the next steps. The first one is a smart charging pilot that is working on prototype level. So we integrated Energy charge points here in Essen. It'll be a tool for DSOs for monitoring in the first step. So getting a better view on the utilization of charge points within the local grids, because we see the biggest bottleneck in smart charging currently is the intelligence of the grids and the data available for the DSOs. And we see that the whole steering, scheduling, etc., then can come in a next step. And so that's live now. We are testing, we are talking to DSOs and also TSOs, as we see that in Germany, but also in other European countries, the DSO and TSO level are coming closer together, and that we need one software solution, kind of, which is integrated across the whole value chain of flexibility. Otherwise, it may result in conflicts. And yeah, we are now testing. We are getting more requirements from the DSOs and from the TSOs. And if you are in the call here and you are interested in the product, feel free to reach out to us to get more details.
Then the next one that is obviously, I guess, for the eRoaming, very important is settlement. We also see that other hubs already have some settlement solution, or at least a billing solution. And to settle charging sessions between e-mobility service providers and charge point operators is obviously also highly interesting for the OCPI network or the OCPI community. And we are all currently in conversation with two settlement providers that want to offer their settlement solution via the OCN. So basically the OCN node is then forwarding, for example, charge data records to facilitate a payment and a billing process between the two parties that are doing eRoaming with each other. This is still in conversation. We will see things happening on that side over the next months. Again, if you are interested in testing that out, we obviously are searching for charge point operators and e-mobility service providers that are willing to test that, and looking forward to receiving your interest. Our next one that is quite interesting is a park sensors service. So basically that you, as a charge point operator, you can install those parking sensors in front of your charging infrastructure, and the OCPI protocol is providing some data fields, what the status of an EVSE is, or the charging station is. And if you then receive a signal that currently your charging infrastructure is blocked, that is basically what this pilot should be about. Again, that then the e-mobility service provider gets the data that currently there is a car parked, and you should not advise your driver to go there in the first place, because he might not be able to charge there. And last but not least, we have are in conversation with a POA data service that's basically helping charge point operators and e-mobility service providers to enrich their data. And again, so that you don't have to make another API connection, that also is able or should be allowed to do over the open charging network, so that you only have to connect once to the open charging network, and you also receive those enriched data for your maps or whatever you want to show to your EV drivers. And you can see on our website, on the OCN store or OCN service page, that we're currently, for all those services, we are seeking for CPOs or eMSPs that want to test that, because this is obviously something that is currently in development, to make those applications available over the open charging network. And yeah, feel free to fill out this form and to get in contact with us, so that we can help with some matchmaking there, to get those pilots running on the open charging network.
Okay, before we have 2 polls in order to make it a little bit more interactive. There are 2 questions in the chat which we can answer right now. We'll also go into that in a little bit more detail later. First is, where is running OCN and how much does it cost? So the OCN really is an open source software. So you can either host your own OCN node yourself, or you can connect to one node. Currently, for example, eMobilify is offering one of those nodes where you may connect to. So it is for free. It is obviously, you have your own server cost if you're hosting such a node. And parking service, yes, as you saw, obviously parking we see as an interesting use case, and there is a startup also where we have a the call I think last week with. So yes, it works, and there is something coming up. And from Heiner Sprung, who are your cooperation partners? Yeah, we have some founding or some members in the foundation. We'll actually jump to that slide quickly, and then we go back for the poll later. So perhaps also governance and what is the Share&Charge Foundation? The Share&Charge Foundation is non-profit, and it's really only dedicated to the purpose of making roaming a better experience for the mass market. It's based in Switzerland, and we had some founding members, Innogy amongst them, Volkswagen. You see some other logos here who are also supporting us as members. Also, warm invite to those of you who are not yet members to reach out to us and support this movement. And then we have another level of cooperation partners where we do some proof of concepts and testings with some other automotives, also beyond Volkswagen. With ELAT, mentioned here, we just did a successful pilot in the Netherlands, you may have heard of. And there are some other MSPs and CPOs under NDA, which are currently working with us. Also, you may see on, we'll come to that later, on the traction side, and also the Bitbucket, we have first open source contributions and first nodes in the test network up and running. Also, perhaps before then we go to the poll, to kind of give you an overall picture on the governance and the foundation. We have an advisory board which is really helpful for us to build a solution which really helps MSPs and CPOs. We have Jakob on board. Most of you may know him as a co-founder of Plug Surfing. He's obviously very experienced in how to set up a whole network and how to get this avalanche rolling and get companies on board. We have Robert Delot, who is very actively, basically he is one of the leading author of OCPI, that helps us to have a very close connection to the OCPI community. He's giving us very valuable input. Patrick Barnard, a serial entrepreneur. Professor Gilbert Friedkin from Fraunhofer Institute, a lot on IT security, IT architectures, and Norbert Verwein, the former CTO of Innogy eMobility Solutions, who has kind of now, I think, 10 years really of experience in eMobility, technical architectures, and also the ecosystem. And we are having regular calls with them, giving them updates, getting feedback from them, and I'm very grateful for them to have them on board. Is still under pilot, already proven use case? Perhaps, yeah. Let's tackle these questions and then we really go to the promised poll. Is it still under pilot, already proven use case? That depends very much on what you mean. The OCN is live, up and running. The other services we just mentioned are proof of concepts on different stages. So they are not live yet. With respect to the PO data, which additional POE information should be provided that is not part of the OCPI POI data?
I can tackle that.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, it is again still 100% OCPI, but it may be that, for example, some charge point operators, they don't provide the correct location data, for example, and this POI data service is then yeah, making those changes and updating the location so that it's not in the middle of the sea, for example, because in some cases, charge point operators, they are just overwhelmed by the work and getting more charge points out there. And this POI data service is making sure that for the map front end, that then really everything is correct and the driver is not confused by any misleading information.
Yeah. And final question for now, if already under implementation, and how many consumers are connected? Yeah, consumers are not connected right now, but charge points. So we have the eNode charge points connected, and we have now, I think, how many parties are currently testing?
Yeah, we come to that later.
We come to that later, but we'll tackle it.
Okay. Then short 2 questions to you guys to also get some feedback from you. We are obviously highly interested in getting some feedback. I would launch the polling now. You should be able to see something, and I would wait a minute or so so that you can answer that. And
you can select also various multiple answers.
I will also share the results of this poll.
Okay, guys, a little bit more of interactivity. Put the coffee aside and press a button.
Cool, we're now at 50% of the participants have voted. Give it a little bit more time for you to read.
Okay, I think.
Okay, that's fine. Then I would end the poll now. Last 2 seconds. Okay, some more coming. Okay, then I end it now, and we'll also share immediately the results with you. So you should be able to see now what what you have voted. Yeah, and highly interesting to see. The cost is.
We are really grateful that nobody even clicked "I don't see a benefit" as for now. That's really good. Reduce cost for establishing. Right. Okay. That's very much in line. OCPI contracting. That's an interesting one because we are having a lot of discussions here internally about the contracting tool. So the ones who click there, we are very happy also to get a little bit more feedback from your side if you're interested in such a service, because also there we are in discussions with various parties, but we got the feedback right now that it's not the most urgent pain.
Apparently it is.
Apparently it is. Thank you very much.
Okay, then I would stop sharing the results now.
Okay, let's move on. We had a Share&Charge Foundation, non-profit advisory board. Let me think about whether anything to add. I think not right now. The invitation, I already mentioned that to you, for you to join. The movement is out there. So over to you, Chris, for a little bit more details.
Yeah, then I would now share 2 more slides, like a little bit on how it actually works. For those of you that are familiar with the OCPI protocol, some of the things are similar, but some of the things also change. And it can all be nailed down to these 3 steps, basically. So the first one is actually that you have to either set up your own OCN node or you use a third-party node instead. So this is the entry point to the Open Charging Network. Then obviously to make your service work with the Open Charging Network, you have to connect your eMSP or CPO backend. And again, to raise that, if you have an OCPI 2.2 API, then it's just seamless because it's in the end an OCPI 2.2 endpoint that you have to connect to, and you just have to make this handshake your IT ops, they definitely know what I'm talking about. And we have some additional features in terms of security to make really sure that we can identify each party on the network. And you have to integrate one more library to your OCPI API to really go into production. For the first tests, again, just connect with your OCPI 2.2 API. If you want to go on production, we highly recommend then also integrating the security libraries. And the third step then is then really basically that you need to find someone to connect or to interact with. We manage that then on the OpenCharging network with a white and black list, so you can define who can actually send you messages on the OpenCharging network. Because if you don't provide any white and black list, everyone can just send you messages. That's maybe something that you don't want. You want to select with whom you want to roam with. And this is then a matter of configuration that your IT ops again can enter in the OCN node to determine your counterparties. And yeah, we get asked a lot, should I run my own OCN node, or is there also another way? Because yeah, again, OCN node, to get it running, Adam is also our lead developer, is also in this call. He might say it's a very quick one. You can set up it in 1 to 2 hours. But if you're not so familiar with the OCN tech stack, then it may also be a case for you to just select a third-party OCN node operator. I always compare this decision to, for example, whether you use your own email server. Some corporates, they don't want to use an external email service provider. They just want to set up their email servers in-house to be sure to have control and to also, yeah, about security, so that no external party is interfering there. And here it's kind of the same situation, that if you run your own OCN node, you have a reduced legal complexity because everything is in-house, and you have very increased IT and data control, basically, because you are the owner of the infrastructure. The downside obviously of that is that you have the internal work of operating this OCN node, which again is, like, if you ask us, easier than maintaining all these peer-to-peer OCPI connections, but it's still work that you have to do. You can outsource this work to an OCN node operator. That's then causing you, spending less on internal resources, but you obviously have to pay then this node operator. And they can be then very specialized and optimize your OCN connection. And the downside of this obviously is that then you need to have a service level agreement or something, some legal contract or relationship with this node operator to make sure that they always are up and running and you don't lose the connection to the OpenCharging network. Yeah, and are there any questions that we can?
Yeah, they are coming, but let's go through it and then we will tackle that finally.
Yeah, since we launched in March, we have a test network that is used a lot, actually. There are 5 nodes that are up and running there, and on this registry that is used for listing the parties that are trying it out. We are currently at 20. A lot of these are, I guess, trials, and people want to get used to the software. But we are also in a lot of conversations, because we get contacted a lot by various European countries. And I also, in this call there, I guess are many from worldwide, from other continents even. And let's see where it goes into production first. If you need help in getting contact to any eRoaming party that you want to roam with, for example, that is already playing around with the OpenCharging network, you can just drop us an email to partners@shareandcharge.com, and we try to facilitate that. That is we can't promise something, but obviously the more they reach out to us, the easier it is making this matchmaking possible. And yeah, if you actually ask your developers, you can also check by yourself to see who's on the network already, because it's an open source network, and everybody can see who is playing with it. So maybe ask your developers to check that out.
Yeah, there's a question also on the names. Fortum Virta has to be. Yes, we are in contact with all of them, sometimes indirectly via the CPOs, because obviously the CPOs then are interested in connecting, but not the backend systems. But none of them is currently, of the three of them here, is currently up and running. As said earlier, Innogy as the major player is there. We did this test with ELAT and Drives on the test network. We are working with One Automotive, but I think we are not allowed to, or we are not allowed to disclose that. And then, as Chris said, you see some of the registered parties on the network. And that's on the user side, so to say. On the other hand, we are getting first open source contributions, and that's also very important for us, because the Share&Charge Foundation is a small foundation. We are getting really good feedback. We are getting a lot of support, but still we need kind of the community also to give us feedback, to support the development, and therefore we are really grateful for open source contributions. If you have any ideas on technical level, Adam, our lead developer, is super happy to give your feedback, also to answer your questions. So it's an open movement. We are very transparent. We try to be very good on documentation, because we know that's crucial for open source adoption. And again, very warm invitation also to support on that side. So then on the roadmap, what is coming and where we are. I take that. So as said earlier, we in March we launched. That was a huge piece of work over the last, really 2019, over the last year. We had the first tech webinar in April. Some of you joined, I think. Now we are having the business webinar, and we just launched a VAT paper. So our Thomas Schenkelberg, who is also part of the foundation board, jointly with one of the leading VAT experts here in Germany. They wrote a paper about VAT issues in cross-border roaming. We are advocating for a new business model or a new structure, which is called referral model for MSPs. So we are convinced that the current reseller model has certain boundaries, and for the mass market, there is a logic for a referral model where the MSP is basically just referring the customer towards the CPO, still having all the access, still have the customer has got the same customer journey, but it makes a huge difference in the whole VAT topic in the back. So you find the paper on the website. If not, reach out to us. We are more than happy to send it to you. Summer, that's a little bit broader, but there is a launch of the OCN 1.1, especially with the service interface. So once now the first startups are also ready with their services to be connected, we promise that we are also ready with the service interface, so that really end of summer, there ideally are the first commercial solution services which can be used by our partners. Yeah, OCN Services, we talked about it. The tool we are really looking also into it is smart charging. We also have a research proposal out there and waiting some funding. It's the same on settlement. That's where we are already working on. It's not our core focus, but we see that it's a huge pain, and we are confident that there's something available, let's say in autumn. The same then applies for end of the year OCN Test Suite. We have started to work on first testing tools. We really started it right now, but that was a feedback we got from the community, that testing as we see it on the OCPP side, we also need that more for OCPI and therewith OCN. And we took that feedback and we are now building a test suite. We will start with first modules to kind of build it incrementally and very closely together with our partners. Also there, if you have any ideas or questions or interest, feel free to reach out to us. There are questions now coming. Is there an English version of the VAT paper? That's a fair point. Looking to Chris, probably there isn't because it's a German VAT issue, right?
It is planned. Thomas, maybe you want to share on that. You're on the call as well. Thomas?
Yeah.
We can hear you. Oh, no. Okay. Anyway, I guess it is planned. It's already on the website. It's now a matter of weeks to translate that because it's a very long paper, actually. Yeah, so on the way.
Oh yeah,
there's also a comment.
Rock, thanks for that. So English version, yeah, will be released soon, and we'll make you aware of that on the social media. If you are interested, especially, you can also drop us an email, and then we will ping you directly. Would you mind sharing about OCN service settlement, or shall I send an email to ask? Yeah, I think it's always good if you send an email. Then we can go into more detail, but there it's basically around what we are currently testing with One Automotive is the idea of instant payment. So at the end of the charging transaction, the CDRs are sent towards this OCN service settlement module, and then a direct payment with the e-money module is triggered directly from the driver or from the MSP towards the CPO. That's the whole logic of it, which obviously solves a few problems around payment, so that you have got instantly the money, you have no additional process steps, etc. But yeah, happy to shoot out some more info if you send us an email.
And the second settlement solution is the traditional model, which then uses the charge detail record to issue bills and make then a traditional settlement between e-mobility service provider and charge point operator. So if you're interested in that, we also help making this match.
Yeah. So we have kind of 9 minutes left. Are there any more questions you want to raise, or also comments? I mean, there are some experts with Achim, with Core as one of the co-founders of OCPI. Very happy to take your questions and feedback.
We also have one more poll. Maybe we do the poll in the meantime.
Okay, then we do one poll, final poll.
Okay. So this is basically a poll around what you need in terms of getting started. We obviously want to support you onboarding and you testing. We have a lot of resources out there on the website already. Feel free to give us feedback, whatever you need to get you running on the open charging network. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Okay.
We've reached 50%.
Okay. Good. So we end the poll and share it, right? Mm-hmm. It's very evenly spread. All right. So thanks. And again, okay. The warm invite really to reach out to us. So on technical support, either we can help you or we can also link you with people who can help you, because that's obviously crucial for us, that and for the whole movement, that you connect and that you get your backend OCPI ready. Good.
And if you want to find partners, then again, reach out to us via email, partners@share&charge.com, so that we can help with the matchmaking. And we obviously also can help you with setting up a node and get connected to one. Just drop us an email there. Okay, then any more questions now?
Yeah, Achim, a technical question. So what about having one CPO backend connected to multiple nodes for high availability? I'm looking towards Chris or
having one. Yeah, that's possible. So, or Adam, intervene if I talk not right things. But I guess you can also use the OCN node for doing load balancing, basically, to make sure that you're always available on the open charging network. That is possible.
Okay. Then engagement UK, yes, we also see that there is a difference, that obviously also roaming in UK is probably the country with the biggest issue on roaming. We also see that regulatory pressure is increasing. We also see that ZapMap is actively testing on our side with the OCN, but generally we also share the view that it's quite complex and that still the companies believe that it's a value proposition kind of to keep the closed system, at least if they are amongst the top 3. But we are convinced, looking to all the other countries, that in the end, if it doesn't work out liberally, the regulatory pressure will solve it.
Yeah, good to hear.
That's good to hear, Dan. There, I think we are on the same page. All right, guys, then coming to the last slide, in order perhaps then to give you 4 minutes before you jump into the next meeting. Really the very warm invite. Let's do that together. We are convinced that this is the solution for the mass market from a business as well as from a technical perspective. It now needs obviously a little bit, kind of the avalanche really needs to start rolling. We are very happy for the support of many of the big players. Sometimes it takes more time than we as a young startup would like to have it, but still it's cool to see that it's going. We are here to support if you want to connect, and warm invitation. If there are any more questions, reach out to us after this call. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.